So this is the risk meeting for April 27th. And then beginning on May 5th, we'll be meeting every Tuesday instead of Monday at 9 a.m. to avoid a series of holiday-related conflicts throughout the summer. Not that anyone's gonna be doing anything but sitting at home for the holidays, but we thought we would not work on them. And we discussed last week also the focus on the hiring of the community manager. I think we have close to 100 applications for that now. Is that right, Matt?
We have well over 100.
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind the high variation.
Yes.
In that number.
Yes. And so our goals, we discussed it, testing, safety critical systems, a list of the OCTO project, and got specific on some things. I think there was, and I don't know, we probably couldn't get Dave Wheeler for this meeting, but I believe there was a.
Yeah, we're reaching out to see if we can get him on for the one on the 5th.
Okay. Yeah, so giving anyone in this business a week notice is not enough time. So remind me, Kate, what we were going to talk to Dave about. I think it's the static analysis, dynamic analysis tool set.
Yeah, he's
or Alyssa. What?
No, he's coming in from the CII side. So
Right.
He's the director for the CII, and a lot of that is
supply chain.
What's sustainability? What is sustainability? What is, what sorts of things should we be looking at tracking from a risk perspective?
So when it comes to actually sort of ordering the priorities for this year, he will be very helpful input.
That's kind of what I'm hoping.
All right.
I have my opinions, as do each of us, but it might be good to get another fresh set of eyes too.
Yeah. Okay.
I did have a question on that, Kate. Are there other projects that are kind of in the risk space at all that I haven't been?
Well, Zephyr.
Which one?
Zephyr is going after safety.
Okay. And then CII, and then obviously SPDX and Open Chain, I'm thinking.
Yep.
Any others that are kind of in that world too?
Zen is going after safety. The ones that are sort of in the risk world in my mind are the ones that are going after safety to some extent.
Zen is a virtualization system.
Yeah, there are people using hypervisors as a way of doing separation and mitigation. So there's a little bit of that going on there.
So is it a distinction like with Zephyr and Zen?
Yeah.
Risk is about the space in, and then with like Open Chain, SPDX, and CII, it's about defining, for lack of a better word, the standards when you think about risk.
Yep.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd say Elisa is, how does, Elisa is about Linux and risk.
Okay.
A lot of the things in the safety standards call for you to understand the risks and mitigate. Okay. So there's a natural sort of alliance there.
Okay.
In mind.
Gotcha.
Just to clarify, Matt, I'm not sure what you mean by going after risk, because.
So, like, to me, Zen and Zephyr are projects that are developing things, developing software, but the spaces, kind of the context that these projects work in is a risk-related context. So that's just where these projects work. But something like SPDX, it's about developing a standard by which you can get your bearings on risk, which is slightly different.
I think SPDX has got one of the variables, or some of the variables we would want to consider for risk.
Yeah.
And it's evolving to have more variables we'll be wanting to consider for risk, being able to be measured from it. So for instance, pedigree provenance informations, i.e. where the code is flown from, who's created it, what processes were used in the creation, and so forth. All of those are things that might influence your decision as to whether or not you want to use it. Okay. So in some senses, risk is, what what do we want to, I'm hoping that some of this may or may not influence some of what we end up putting into some of the SPDX3, for instance, for the, provenance and pedigree aspects. What do we want to make sure that it's available to be tracked and used as a metric?
Okay.
Yeah. And from a CI's concern is supply chain security.
Supply chain security and transparency. Mm-hmm.
So there's dimensions of just kind of knowing what's in the software, dimensions
Mm-hmm.
of adequate testing for things that are safety critical, and dimensions of licensing that are related to provenance and pedigree, but also can be process implications for safety critical kinds of systems.
The other side of it is like, do you know that an authorized person has built your image?
Right.
That's a risk metric in my mind. Okay. Are you using software from a place where there's, it has been tampered with?
So there's the possibility that I would deploy a piece of software that's an open source project, but if it was built by someone who's not authorized, then potentially other malware or whatever could be injected, or non-tested components could be. I guess I think of auto grade Linux, where some engineer thought it would be a great idea to just throw some power window controls in there, and they accidentally affect the braking system.
Yeah, like I say, there's, are the people who are creating the image that you're deploying, do they know what they're doing?
Right.
And I think OpenChain and CII, as well as now some of the SPDX stuff, are also heading towards that direction. Do we have a way of catching? OpenChain is, do they know what they're doing with open source in general? SPDX right now is, how do we start adding the information so you can make a policy about something?
Can I ask a process question to you, Kate? So we have OpenChain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Toyota is a member, as an example. Toyota is a member of OpenChain.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have automotive grade Linux, which Toyota is also a member of automotive grade Linux. So from a kind of a process perspective, when, as an example, an organization is thinking about risk and they have membership in a variety of these different kind of risk projects or risk related projects,
Mm-hmm.
how does that work? So like, does an organization contribute to OpenChain, hoping to see the way that work is specified kind of in this OpenChain space? Do they hope to see that work deployed in automotive grade Linux? Am I totally thinking about this wrong? Like, is SPDX just a tool in this process? Sometimes I have a hard time like connecting all of these risk things.
What you want in my head? Okay. So I can't speak specifically for Toyota. I'm not a Toyota person, right? Yeah. But the way it comes across to me is they participate in various projects that are advancing their interests. And if they're caring about a certain topic, they're going to try to participate in it. Mm-hmm. So for instance, Toyota was one of the founders of ELISA for safety critical. They're also, very strong, participant in automotive grade Linux.
Yeah.
As part of the automotive grade Linux stuff, they were doing a fair amount of work, helping to promote OpenChain. And they also promoted OpenChain into ELISA.
Okay.
So they try to cross-pollinate from their interests because they see these things as being part of a solution. Mm-hmm. That's how I read it.
Okay.
And so, between SPDX and OpenChain, and between ACT, right, automation of compliance tooling stuff that's emerging, how do we get all of these tools to interact and communicate effectively? Well, that's kind of where some of these, standards like OpenChain and SPDX come in.
Okay.
Right.
So does Zephyr as a project track what's going on in OpenChain?
Zephyr as a project does not track what's going on in OpenChain. There's members in Zephyr who are members in OpenChain. How much they cross-pollinate and how much they pay attention is member by member specific. Okay. Yeah, there's certainly various levels of engagement in various projects depending on who the participants are. It's all people at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's people and management objectives. And, is there a KPI associated with something? And that someone's motivated to make things happen.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Taking a few notes here.
Actually, ACT isn't a risk standard. ACT will be a risk context.
Risk context, okay.
In your terms. It's trying to get the tooling to interact properly using the standards.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of taking some of the same notes as Matt, but
That's okay.
I'm also like, when I see the SPDX OpenChain Elisa I did SPDX twice there, integration, that's sort of that's something to think about as we develop metrics and
these are all places that I'd say SPDX, OpenChain, and ACT are more than your triplet there. Okay. Because it's what's the ACT is where some of this stuff will be part of. Okay, what flows we want to put in place. Elisa is specific to Linux in terms of trying to figure out. Mm-hmm.
And then so ACT is like assembling basically I don't know, pipelines.
ACT is what ACT is trying to do is form enough of a structure such that all the open source projects associated with these types of compliance workflows can have a place for prioritizing gaps being filled between them. And we can identify what workflows are missing. But the data that's going to come in is what we want to extend SPDX out to, for instance.
So from your perspective, Kate, I think I have a pretty good handle on SPDX. If there was another...
I'm actually going to challenge you on that one, Matt.
I have a pretty good understanding of
because how good a handle do you feel like you have on SPDX 3?
I don't. Yeah. In terms of like what the goals of SPDX are, just in the sense of providing a standard that can be exchanged meaningfully to provide things like pedigree and provenance. But in terms of fields, no. Right.
So what's happening right now is 2.2 should be coming out this week.
Yeah.
We're in the last week of the public review period. Mm-hmm. It's been public all the way along, but nonetheless, we're sort of saying, okay, line in the sand, 2.2 is out. And then we're going to be pretty active on 3.0. Okay. 3.0 is refactoring the specification to have the notion of a baseline where there are certain fields that no matter which stories we want to tell are there. And then we have a licensing profile, as well as some security profiles, as well as a pedigree, provenance, export, so forth.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is expand, like we took a lesson from what came in from the Japanese and the automotive side with the SPDX Lite. And this is what they consider the minimum viable in order to understand what they've got in their system.
Sure.
Other people don't even want to include licensing. They just want, okay, I want to identify this object and I want to say its relationship to other objects.
Okay.
That's what's effectively going to go into base.
Okay.
There's other people who want to say, has this been tampered with? Right? And so there's an element of integrity checking that needs to come into play. I think that's likely to be the base. And then from that, what we'll probably end up doing is building up from there in terms of, okay, well, the automotive manufacturers, for instance, and people who are doing safety are going to need to know who did the builds, what tools were used, because that's part of the safety standards. You know, and having that evidence be able to be generated is part of, you know, satisfying the criteria.
Right.
So
Does it,
can
I understand what SPDX right now is, excuse me, I'm trying to sneeze. It looks, it's really an enumeration of the things that are in a package or set of packages. And it sounds like the processes that go along to assemble a package or set of packages are that's the significant add to the 3.0 version of the specification. Am I getting that right?
I'd say that's one of the dimensions of add.
Okay.
Like, for instance, we still don't have a good safety story sitting there.
Right.
That's another dimension of add. Not safety story, security story. S words, Monday morning. The security, you know, what vulnerabilities do you know about at a point in time is a risk story.
Yep.
Is it safe for me to deploy this or not? What vulnerabilities are known? And, you know, from my understandings of talking to people over the last couple of years, there's an insurance industry that cares about this sort of thing. And so when people decide to deploy something, they may or may not get insurance, and they need to know the state of something. And so being able to articulate, oh, well, right now we have like CPEs, we can go query the database. Okay, you know what points, but we've got no way of recording what is known at a point in time.
Right.
So adding that dimension of this is what is known at this point in time is one of the things that, you know, is a clear direction we have to go for risk.
Well, can I make a comment here? So it would probably, trying to think of what you think the best approach is in terms of trying to gain understanding from these variety of communities. So I think I can jump on SPDX pretty quickly and get my bearings pretty fast on what's going on. CII, I've had some familiarity with, and it sounds like it's kind of getting a re-examination. Yeah. So is there, of that list of Zen and Zephyr and Elisa and ACT and OpenChain?
I think OpenChain, CI, and SPDX, where the standards are being created, will influence what we want to be looking at for what can we make sure that gets caught in those standards, for one thing, and what can we extract out for the
rest. Do you think it would be worth my time to like participate in SPDX, participate in the sense of getting my bearings on how the work is being done in SPDX, OpenChain, and CII? Because this may be some time I can afford if we hire a community manager. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, yeah. And I think so we're probably going to be forming some work groups in these areas on the SPDX side. I'll tell you, you know, I want to close this one, and I want to, quite frankly, get some of the talk with like the reproducible builds and the compiler folk and get that side of it going, so that we can get an articulation, accurate, a fairly good agreement on these are the fields we will try to build things to create. So the evidence is there. The step of, okay, well, if the evidence is there, what metrics are going to be necessary to look at so policies can get created?
Okay.
If the creation of the policies is where OpenChain might span into.
Okay.
It's also what I think with CHAOSS here and the risk metrics, it's, you know, are we catching the right thing? So it's not a one-to-one. I think it's going to be a feedback loop here.
Yep.
I agree. And
So it might help me a lot if I can kind of track all of these things.
Sure.
Just
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah, no, it's okay, Matt. I'm happy to spend more time with you in all these places.
Well, from knowing where to go with the risk working group,
Yeah.
I think there's a dynamic and expanding universe of things to think about, and they're clearly more interconnected than we've addressed them so far. I think it's really the end product and ensuring its assemblage and the safety checks that went into that assemblage that seem like they might be part of the same standard. Like when I read SPX 2X, I read a standard that's largely an inventory of what's there. And this sounds a lot more like an inventory and then the processes that get us to another packaged piece of software and then a separate process for deployment. So it's almost sort of following risk across the entire software development life cycle. If I'm hearing this correctly.
Yeah, it is, I think. I think it is I think that there's a full set of information about life cycles that are coming into play. And it's figuring out how we can get the information flowing automatically through the system so that the right decisions can be made and risk can get mitigated. And where CHAOSS is, what information can be used for policies.
And it also sounds like I'm sort of trying to see in a crystal ball here, but it seems like SPDX is going to have to incorporate either a series of embedded schemas or possibly different schemas for different parts of this that have integration points. Whereas right now I can comprehend what SPDX is as a kind of a inventory or bill of material.
Yeah, if you guys want to turn off recording, I'll basically show you a quick video